I'm not certain. It might be an emergency. Just so you know, this is what I got. I got my protective eyewear. It's not shatterproof, but it's UV protection in case I need it and I need to respond to any attempts to use the situation in Hong Kong as a derivative for anything really, but up to and including gas mask, gas mask canister, bought military surplus like any good American, convenient carry bag, and I got my industrial sturdy water thermos, hot or cold. All right, and I have my carrying case. So you know, I'm as prepared as I can get in the derivatives market. But then if we need to get literal, it's right here. Birth certificate, what they call an official, formal, actual birth certificate. We can question all the other things we want. And Texas driver's license. I'm covering up the contract number. You don't need to see the contract number. It's my license from state of Texas. You don't need the contract number. If you were in Department of Homeland Security, I would make sure that by the end of this fiscal year, you were cut off from using anybody's personal identification documents and any sort of associated contract number connected to any illegally acquired biometric accounts for any alleged Homeland Security purposes, up to and including the creation or dissemination of pornographic material. But that's not the topic at hand here. What the topic at hand here is taxes. Now, I don't know exactly what the timelines are in Texas. I haven't looked it up recently because it's been other priorities. But you never know. It might be one of those times where somebody has to declare their candidacy as a third party candidate. And, we're on lockdown, so I don't know how we're supposed to go out and get petitions. And I'm pretty sure that that was part of what they were banking on. But if you are going to run, one of the things you have to do is an ethics disclosure. And for disclosure purposes, for ethics disclosure purposes, you have to discuss certain aspects of campaign financing in a particular time. But one of the things I think is very important is taking a chapter out of Ronald Reagan's book, which, by the way, was influenced by a chapter in Jimmy Carter's book. See, it was a very controversial issue during the Reagan campaign about whether or not he was going to release his taxes, whether or not he was going to provide information about his tax returns as part of the campaign. It was understood that Jimmy Carter had done it during his campaign for various reasons. And although Reagan was not necessarily under any legal obligation to do so, it was adjudged that by certain people involved with his campaign that it would be a bad decision if he did not release his tax returns because of the precedent that had been set up by Jimmy Carter. Now, my understanding is that there was a variety of responses to this, including some allegations that Ronald Reagan made a considerable amount of money, and that this might turn off working class voters, or this might keep certain constituencies from being very feeling like they would be represented by somebody that had that kind of an income level. And my understanding of the response from from the future First Lady of the United States, Nancy Reagan, was that, well, my husband worked and he made this money. Why would America want a poor president? Right? That's my paraphrase. But I got to be honest with you. I was like recounting, and I was like, wow, it's honest and it's worth it to know. Part of what they say about campaigning is that you need to be able to demonstrate that you can get the kind of support from your constituency to give you the authority, first of all, to be able to represent yourself as being a representative of others. But that part of, and a large part of what Congress does, is raise money and spend money. That's pretty much the primary job, figuring out how to get public services and how to get public resources, how to finance the act of the country, and how to make sure that we have the appropriate infrastructure necessary, not only for the functioning of the economy in a literal material way, but also infrastructure necessary to secure the country, both financially and literally, right? So that's why I think it's actually important for people to disclose their tax records. You know, if you look, there are sites that say things about various things that have been going on regarding campaign financing. You can find that very instructive. But one of the things I think is very important at this time is acknowledging my own tax record. I did not file taxes for several years because I did not have income. I didn't make any income at all for several years, and when I did make income, I understood that I made below the legal amount that one had to make in order to have to file for taxes. Not only that, I didn't have a permanent address. I was homeless. I did not have a mailing address to which I could receive tax documents in the mail. Even if I was on the streets, you'd have these homeless shelters. They may or may not be able to provide you with some sort of address service or some sort of mail service. But I didn't have an actual address to which they could send tax records. And so this past year, beginning of this year, prior to the announcement regarding COVID, by the way, early part of this year, I filed my taxes for the first time in several years. I'd only made $7.44 in reported income, literal income last year. But I filed taxes anyway, and I'm glad I did. I learned that despite only making $7.44 for the year, that when it comes to filing taxes, there's all kinds of other considerations, including intangible considerations that go into assessing somebody's tax liability or tax credit. And after I filed, and then they responded, one of the things that had to happen was I had to contact them to confirm some information because they hadn't filed in a while. So I did. And while I was talking to the person with the specific account number, they gave me a rundown of what the IRS reports as my income for the last 7 years. It goes all the way back to 2013. Actually, it goes all the way back to 2013. Now, let me tell you, what the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, reports as my income for the past several years is very different from what Social Security reports as my income for the last several years. Specifically, concerning what would have been 2017 to be eligible for 2018, but more than that, 2016. And there are several things about that that are concerning to me. Amongst them, the fact that in 2014, I was given a check, according to the IRS, from the Employment Retirement System of the City and County of San Francisco. Nobody ever told me I was even eligible for a payout from the Employment Retirement System from the City and County of San Francisco. I was never told about this check. I never received the check. No, and in all of the years since then, I've been attempting to contact them and the state of California and the Health and Human Services Department and the Attorney General and other places, because listed right now online is information about my identity. It says that there is a National Provider Index number connected to me. And this number was something I needed to perform my job when I worked for the City and County of San Francisco. But I haven't worked for the City and County of San Francisco since November of 2014. I'm sorry, March of 2014. 2015. I haven't used that number since November of 2014. And this number is still online, and there are several identity accounts connected to my name that have this number. Regardless of who I've contacted, nobody has ever responded to me about taking this offline. And my concern has been that they intentionally created these accounts of me as if I was a specialist with that number. Because while I can't prescribe medication, and while I was there I couldn't prescribe medication, what I could do was verify the certificates for people who could. And so if you were able to steal an identity account connected to me with that kind of credentialing, you could potentially authorize other fraudulent accounts to bill insurance. And that includes billing insurance in connection with the prescription of medications. This is why, as soon as I found out that there were these electronic accounts of my identity online, that I contacted everybody I could to say, shut that down. There's no reason for there to be this account with my identity representing as if I am still working at the city and county of San Francisco in a position where I have this number active under my identity. Especially if for 10 days I was engaged in alleged mental health treatment with the intention of giving me a mental health diagnosis and prescribing me medication in manners that were done completely illegally. See, with that kind of credentialing I had to understand there were certain laws about what was legal in billing, insurance for medical procedures. And if you didn't meet those requirements, which also include responding in a timely manner to grievances that were filed with places like the Health and Human Services or like local state commissions, you lost your license. You couldn't bill and you couldn't even see anybody during that time. You had to go through a process of recertifying and reacquiring your license. So if you admit me for treatment for 10 days under fraudulent pretenses, give me a diagnosis, spend 10 days billing insurance, try to prescribe me medication, and then set up a bunch of benchmarks on medical treatment later on, while I still have an active identity account saying that I am a professional qualified to assess the credentials or to verify the credentials of people that are licensed to provide mental health treatment and bill for it. What does that say? That's why it was important for those accounts to be shut off. I wasn't actively engaged in that role. Or do I qualify as a whistleblower? Is there some way in which I am still acknowledged as being employed by an agency that would allow for an evaluation of legitimate intake processes, legitimate prescription processes, legitimate diagnostic processes in order to be eligible to bill insurance, especially concerning Medicare and Social Security, for medical treatment? Well, if that was the case, nobody informed me, right? So I don't have an active contract. I don't have an active agreement. I do not have cognizance that I personally am still employed. What I do have is cognizance that I was at one time a disaster service worker for a city and county public health department that received funding and authority from the Health and Human Services Department and had to report to the Centers for Disease Control. So, what happened to my employment retirement benefits that were issued in 2014? I was given a 1099-R in August of 2015, which would have been a year after I'd been hired. And the ironic thing is the amount of my retirement benefits is the same as a form number that I'm not going to disclose right now. But that ever since I have been intentionally and strategically trafficked in consideration of the implications connected to that form, and I have been denied any acknowledgement up to and including by members of the United States Congress and the United States Senate when I had national security level information to report. See, all they had to do after I gave them a permission to check my records was running a report for the IRS. They already friggin' knew. They already knew what it said at Social Security. They already knew it said at the IRS. I gave them permission to get that information to help me. And we are going on over 3 years without anybody contacting me back. I'm just saying, man. I'm just saying. Who else has a report at the IRS that they're not willing to share with us? Because you guys decided to put 127 co-sponsorships on that bill on my mother's birthday, which would also have been the anniversary of a $400 million water bond with the city of New York, right? You guys did a great job following up on my request for that investigation. Great
job. By the way, my mother died. My mother died exactly 3 months after her 61st birthday. She didn't make it to the retirement age for her Social Security benefits. You still want that water? You still want that water?